So I ran a poll the other day just to see where everyone was struggling in their SMMA journey. And it turns out that everyone sucks at outreach. So in this video, I'm going to share with you how I book 3 sales calls per week with only 10 minutes of outreach per day. Now, I know 3 sales calls is not impressive by any means whatsoever, but for someone who does only 10 minutes of outreach per day using only cold email and basically only started cold email like a month ago, I think it's pretty cool. Now, this isn't going to be like some video about a secret cold email script that's going to guarantee you 5 sales calls per week, but more so how to approach and like build your own systems for creating a good outreach script that works for your business. Because trust me, I've tried copying scripts, you've tried copying scripts, shit doesn't work. So right now, just to clarify, the only outreach I'm doing is cold email. So no Facebook or Instagram DMs, no cold calls, and I'm not even using like looms in my emails. Like this is just plain text. And I've also stopped using Upwork. Now, there is a small catch, and that is that I am paying for a VA to kind of help me write the emails, and I'm also using a software to help me send out the emails. But really, like, the kind of main secret sauce of this video isn't like really about the automation, although it does save me a lot of time and I will talk about it. But again, this is really more about coming up with the methodology and the approach to creating your own effective script that works for your niche, for your offer, for your business. And these are the same methods that basically give me like a 2 to 3% call booking rate with my emails, meaning every 100 emails I send out, I end up booking around 2 to 3 calls, which is, pretty decent. Now, you may be wondering, like, dude, if you have a 2 to 3% call booking rate, why don't you just send out like 100 emails a day instead of 25 and you'll book like 10 calls a week? That's a good question, which I came up with myself. Well, one, I'm still working a full-time job, meaning I can't actually take 2 to 3 sales calls per day. But 2, I think this is really more the main one and kind of an excuse now that I think about it. But, I kind of want to dial in my service delivery a bit more, be more confident about getting results for clients before I really like crank up my client acquisition. And, again, I know that kind of sounds like an excuse, and I will be increasing my outreach over the next few weeks, but that's just my reasoning for the time being. So how on earth do I get these results? I'm going to walk you through the 3 most crucial kind of components or pieces, which I think make up my outreach strategy. So the first thing when it comes to, doing effective outreach is you actually need people to outreach to, right? And that basically is lead generation. So lead generation is kind of divided up into 2 things, which is, actually sourcing leads and then qualifying those leads. So let's start with lead sourcing. Honestly, there's many different ways to find leads in your business. I know a lot of people struggle with this, so I will give some ideas. But the first thing you need to understand is like, where does your niche actually hang out? Like what social media platform do they use? What do they check for most of the day? For some people, it might be Facebook groups. Some it might be YouTube. Some it might be, just their email. I prefer email because, really every business owner will pretty much always have an email. So cold email, it's kind of the coldest type of outreach because there's not really any human aspect. There's not really, they can't really see who you are, right? It's just kind of a block of text and you're basically trying to get someone to trust you with just a few sentences. I personally prefer it because it's the easiest to kind of systemize, it's the easiest to test, and that's just how I like to do things. Now, again, there's not really like one perfect way to find leads or to find emails or to find like contact information, but I find the most time efficient way for my method, which is cold email, is to just pay for leads, right? Now, I personally have paid like a few $100s for like thousands of leads. And, now I'm pretty much set for the next year. Now, I know not many people have, not everyone has a few $100s just to throw at leads, but some websites you can use if you do want to use this method of, finding lead lists. There's tools like Phantom Buster, D7 Lead Finder, and I know there's a bunch of other websites that basically just sell leads. Like you can also Google, like literally Google like Shopify leads, and you'll find like 10 websites just showing you like different types of brands that, run Shopify stores. And certain websites work, better for certain niches, like local versus online businesses. Like I think D7 and Phantom Buster are both more targeted towards like local leads, but again, just do your research. Now, again, if you don't want to pay, there are websites like, myip.ms. There's also like, you can go through Facebook groups. And if you're doing like content creation, for example, you can basically just like, I don't know, type in podcast on YouTube and just look for every single podcast and reach out to them, right? You can probably find a link to their social media. You can probably find a link to their Facebook group or whatever, and just try to reach out to them there. So for the people that, want to pay for leads and want to pay for like a VA and whatever, but don't really have the money right now, I actually used a method from Montel Gordon. Basically, his method is to find a low ticket client on Upwork really quickly and basically use the cash flow from that one client to basically pay for all your overhead and outreach expenses, right? So what I did, is I actually ended up using this method to close my first client. I had like, $500-$600 of profits, and I paid for my leads. I paid for a VA to help me write and source leads. And that's basically my approach. You can do whatever you like. like. You know, if you have a part-time job, that also works really well. But I would say that, you know, paying for leads, paying for someone to help you do outreach and to qualify leads is probably one of the best ways to use like a little bit of extra cash that you have each month if you're just starting an SMMA. So on the topic of qualifying leads, so I would say this is very niche specific. For online businesses, you probably want to find a business that has, you know, Facebook pixel, because that shows that they understand the value of advertising. If you're doing like content creation, you obviously want to make sure they have like some type of social media, right? Either they have, you know, a YouTube channel or a TikTok or whatever, and just like kind of like use your logic, right? It's really up to you, and you really determine like what type of lead you're looking for, and that determines your criteria. Now, my only like really big advice here is don't spend too much time qualifying each lead. The reason I say that is because one, like it just takes so long. Like in my opinion, it's better to, you know, spend time on unqualified sales calls where you can A, you know, get more sales experience, and B, like learn more about your industry instead of wasting like, I don't know, 2 hours a day on sending like 10 outreaches, right? It's just a complete waste of time. I would say the most you want to have in terms of criteria is like maybe 2 to 3 big criteria for, you know, basically filtering out leads, and don't do any more than that because it's just not worth your time. Or again, you know, you can pay someone to do it if you have like 1 or 2 clients or just have some cash from a job. Highly recommend you spend some money here just because, you know, it saves so much time. And I would say probably the worst thing about SMMA, if you're doing everything manually, is just sourcing leads, qualifying leads, and just doing manual outreach. I remember when I just started out, before I even like got my first client, I was like just looking up, you know, different YouTubers and trying to find a business that way. And that just took me like hours just to reach out to 20 people. So that's just my take on it. I know it's not free, but it is what it is, right? All right, so the next piece of my outreach strategy is probably, you know, what most of you came for, which is the outreach script, or basically how you come up with your outreach messaging. So I would say a good outreach message is kind of broken up into 4 main components. Now, I know there's probably like more other components out there that other gurus talk about, but these are my main 4 that I focus on when it comes to testing. So the first one is your hook or your subject line. This is really just to grab attention, but you don't want to grab attention in a bad way. So you basically want to make this like a Trojan horse kind of strategy, right? Like you want to make them open something that they think is something worth reading. But one thing I do want to warn against is to not be deceptive, right? Like don't trick them, like don't ask like a customer and type in the subject line like, hey, just checking in on my order from 2 weeks ago. And then when they open the email, it's like, psych, bitch, let me take your order. So just some examples of like, you know, decent or good subject lines or hooks can just be very simple, right? Like, hey, just have a quick question about your business. You know, just want to ask you something. Hey, how's it going? Like just stuff that makes it seem like you're human talking to another human. Now, the next component, which I think is pretty important to have in your outreach message, is to have some type of pattern interrupt or some type of differentiation. Like you really don't want to look like everyone else. Like the worst possible thing you can do is to become another one of the 20 to 30 emails that they get every day that just looks like, you know, some fucking idiot, doesn't give a shit about the business, doesn't give a shit about the person, just reaching out to them, trying to get their money. Like the moment someone can tell that you're just like some generic sales email, they'll basically turn their brain into defense mode and they'll basically shut out whatever you're trying to tell them. So basically you want to stand out and you just don't want to sound like a salesperson, right? You don't want to sound like, or even if you can sound like a salesperson, but just don't be like, you know, hey, like my name's Ryan, I work at this agency and no one gives a shit about you. Just one example, right? You can be really blunt, you can be really like to the point, just be like, hey, Benjamin, I'm just trying to sell you here, and I know you're tired of this shit, so I'm just gonna make this nice and painless, just in case you're trying to get customers, just in case you're trying to grow your business. I might have something for you. By the way, you don't pay until we get your results, and by the way, we also get great results like this guy over here. And if that interests you at all in any way whatsoever, just hit me up. You know, just talk to me, dude. Just say something. If not, totally cool. Have an amazing day. Act like a human, right? Just don't be like everyone else. And kind of on the points is another thing that I found works really well when it comes to like cold messaging is to add your own personality. The reason this is important is because people want to feel like they're engaging and communicating with real humans. Just for example, right? Imagine you walk into an office instead of cold emailing someone, and you go in and say, hey, like, you know, my name is Ryan, how are you doing? You know, just, you know, wanted to see how things are going with you guys and whether you need any help with your marketing. I'm actually specialized in this, blah, 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 blah. There's a much higher chance they'll at least be receptive to you and actually talk to you because they can see that you're a real person and not just some random bot spamming them from some email lists on the other side of the world. Obviously, you can't do that when it comes to cold email, but you want to make it feel like they're talking to a person. And the only way you can really do that is to really add your own personality. You know, be funny, be yourself, like just say things that you may say in person, and it can be a little bit quirky, just don't be awkward and weird and dumb. And I know it's a little bit hard to explain, but just be a human, right? Be a fucking person, and people might respond to you better. For example, like I think I've gotten like 5 or 6 responses from prospects now, like actually complimenting me on my cold email, right? They're like, hey, like I actually appreciate your approach. I like the way you type your email. You know, I'm actually not even interested in your email. I just wanted to say that, you know, I like the way you wrote it. And again, this just comes from me putting my personality, you know, just putting myself into the email instead of saying like, hey, my name is Ryan, buy my service. Here's this cool offer. I don't know. That's just my approach to things, and I find it does help a lot. So the third important component of an outreach script, in my opinion, is having some type of personalization. Now, this isn't absolutely mandatory, but I would say it definitely helps. Again, it really just adds this human element, and it also shows that you took some time and effort to actually like learn about the business and actually invest in them. This kind of plays on the idea of reciprocation, right? Like if someone can tell that you have clearly put time and effort into learning about them and into their business, they're gonna feel a little bit of inkling of guilt or need to kind of basically reciprocate that and maybe give you a few minutes of their time. Now, again, I would say it's not absolutely necessary, and there are kind of different degrees to personalization. Like you could maybe just include their company name, their first name, or you can just do like a little bit of research, right? Just maybe look up like an article or interview they were in and just briefly mention that in your email. And I do find that I do get some positive responses, and they specifically say like, yeah, I appreciate that you took the time to learn about my business and learn about my life, blah, 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 blah. So again, it is nice to have, but not absolutely necessary. All of this is just kind of like ways to improve your open rate and your response rate and maybe get like some nicer replies. But really the most important component of your cold email or your outreach message or whatever is going to be your offer. Your offer is going to be like 80% of your email. You can be as funny as you want. You can be as nice as you want. It's not going to matter if your offer either sucks or just isn't relevant to the prospect. Now, your offer needs to have, I would say, 3 things. One is it needs to actually be relevant to the prospect. Like it actually has to solve a problem that they care about or that they're actually trying to solve, right? Don't try to sell followers to someone who's just trying to make money. The next thing is that it should provide some sort of guarantee or at least some type of risk reversal. If you're just starting out, you should be taking on a lot more risk than someone who's more seasoned because frankly, there's not a lot of reason to trust you. Just think about it from, the point of view, if you were the business owner, right? And you're making, let's say, I don't know, 20 to 30K a month, and some stranger, some random kid across the world just reached out to you. Would you really trust them with your business? Would you really want to take on risk just to work with a stranger who like basically came out of nowhere? So you do have to take on some type of risk and some type of like responsibility, put some skin in the game really when it comes to just starting out in an agency and really even down the road. And finally, you have to have some type of time frame. Like you need to tell them when you can actually achieve that result. Like 10K per month is cool, but if it takes you 3 years to add 10K per month to a business, fuck off, right? Whereas if you could do that in 60 days, well, that's a very different story. So make sure you include some type of time frame or constraint where you can achieve that goal. All right, so the third and kind of final piece of the puzzle when it comes to outreach is testing. And I would argue that this is probably one of, if not the most important part when it comes to outreach, because honestly, you're not going to be able to come up with the perfect outreach script until you do a shit ton of testing. And the reason is, everyone's, niche, service, offer, their personality, their name, their picture, their face, it's all different, right? And all these kind of come together in this sort of weird way where an outreach script could work for like perfectly for one person, but like it could completely not work for another person who's doing something very similar. And the only way you can find the absolute best kind of outreach method or system or script that works for you and your business is to test. And you want to test everything, right? Test every single component I just talked about. So, that's the hook, the differentiation, the personalization, and especially you want to test the offer. You want to test everything and you want to make sure that you are keeping track of everything, which I will talk about later. Now, the second thing, which I would say is really important when it comes to testing, or I wouldn't say really important, but it definitely helps a lot and helps you get results a lot faster, is automation. So if you have like, again, $200 to $300 per month to spare, it's an amazing way to optimize your outreach because, the only way you're really going to get data for your testing is to have a lot of volume. And if you're only sending like, 10, 20, 30 emails a day, it's going to be a lot harder to get data compared to like someone who's sending 50 to 100 emails per day. I'm only sending like 25 per day, so I can't really say this, but yeah, if you can test like 2 to 3 variables per week instead of 2 to 3 variables per month, let's say, you're going to be able to optimize your emails or your outreach a lot faster compared to someone who's basically not doing that much, right? And doesn't have a lot of data. Now, I know, again, not everyone has like $200 to $300 per month to spare. So honestly, if you can set aside like, 2 hours a day to send 25 to 40 emails, I think that is good enough to get some type of data going. And finally, just touching on what I said before, is to measure everything. You want to measure every single component, right? So, you want to see what your open rate is. You want to see what your positive response rate is. You want to see like, is this variable getting a higher open rate than this one? Or is this one getting more responses than this one, right? And you want to test like, is this offer better? Is this hook better? Is this whatever better? You want to test everything and you want to keep track of everything. So I have a spreadsheet that keeps track of every single email I've sent. It checks all my rates, all my stats, and, I basically use it to make my decisions. Honestly, outreach really is just a numbers game. The more leads you can get, the more leads you can qualify, the more outreach you can send, the more testing you can do, the more data you can get, the better your results are going to be. If you're not going to try to improve your numbers, if you're not going to try to increase your numbers, then you're just not going to improve your results. And finally, just a little bonus I want to add is to do follow-ups, right? Half my sales calls, I would say, have come from follow-ups, just saying like, hey, what's going on? Are you still interested? Just checking in a few times, checking in one more time. This is the last time I'm reaching you. Keep it really short and simple. And the reason I like to keep it simple instead of like typing out these long, fancy like follow-up emails is because it makes you seem kind of needy, right? You doing a follow-up already makes you seem desperate and needy, which obviously pushes people away, just kind of like when it comes to dating girls. So if you're already doing like these annoying follow-ups, you want to keep it as, you know, short and sweet as possible. Just be like, hey, you know, just checking in, see if you're interested in this. If not, cool, have a good one. But no matter what, just do your follow-ups because they are absolutely crucial for getting those responses and those booked calls. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I know there's honestly a lot more to outreach that I could have covered, but again, I'm not an expert. And again, if you watch my last video, there are many ways for you to research how to do outreach. There are many different methods of outreach for different niches, for different businesses. Make sure you do your, you know, research. Make sure you put in the effort to find ways to find leads for your business. Because to be very frank with you, I think SMMA especially is kind of one of those businesses where if you share all your secrets, then someone's going to steal them and that method will no longer work. And the same thing goes with like, you know, finding leads, having a specific outreach script, all this kind of stuff, right? So the more you can find your own specific information, the more you can find, you know, stuff that not everyone has access to, the better. It's not that I'm trying to hide everything from you. I just actually don't have that much information and I'm just downloading leads from like these lead websites that I just talked to you about.
Hey, forgot to mention in the video the actual name of the software that I'm using to send my emails. So I'm using Lemlist. I'll just put on the screen somewhere here. But the only thing I'll say is make sure that you have the correct DNS settings to make sure that, you know, their email delivery is actually good. The other thing is make sure you're not sending emails too frequently because you can actually set, you know, the amount of time in between each email. Make sure you're not sending like every 2 minutes. Otherwise, you'll get marked as spam, or you might get marked as spam.
Yeah, so guys, that's pretty much it when it comes to outreach. I know I don't have a lot of expertise myself. I'm just kind of getting into this, you know, I'm like 1 month into doing cold emails, but hopefully this helped a little bit. And if it did, you know, just leave your feedback below, click the buttons, and I will see you in the next video.